little over 20 years ago, tragic events occurred in a Dartmouth neighborhood at the hands of two teenagers. Two Dartmouth professors were stabbed to death in their own home by a couple of kids that they let in based on a lie. In the end, the double homicide divided many in the community when it came time for punishment. Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, the host, and thank you for being here. I'm really excited that you've chosen to listen to the podcast today, and I want to remind you that if you aren't connected to me on social media, we should be connected on social media. So go to 10minutemurder.com for links if you need those, or you can just type it in 10-Minute Murder into the search bar wherever you're trying to follow the show, and it'll pop right up. Also, and even more importantly, especially if you're new to listening, subscribe to 10-Minute Murder so that you can more easily find it and always get the newest episodes. And you ever see something and it upsets you for no reason whatsoever? I saw a TikTok video of some kids that were playing with a phone, an actual landline phone, and they were shocked that it worked and kept calling each other from it saying, "I can hear you." Of course you can hear them, it's a phone. And it doesn't help when my own child he talks about some new trend or whatever, and I have no idea what he's talking about. And I say, I don't know what you're talking about. And he says, "That's because you were born in the 1900s. He's got a mouth on him. The point is, kids do dumb stuff. And we've all been kids, so you know that's a fact. We've all done dumb stuff as kids. But those dumb things can range from the TikTok video that I mentioned to actual murder. The murder is thankfully way less common, but it does happen. And that is what we're talking about in today's story. A cold night in New Hampshire on January 22nd, 2001. A family friend, Roxana Verona, was arriving for dinner at 6:30 p.m. at Half and Suzanne Zantop's home in Etna, about 4 miles from Dartmouth College. Half and Suzanne were professors there. The Zantop home was located in a very remote section, and it was surrounded by woods on 3 acres and was pretty much invisible from the road. When Roxana arrived, the doors to the house were open, and it was silent, much too quiet for there to be a dinner about to happen. She stepped inside and found both Half and Suzanne on the floor, lying in pools of their own blood. Both had multiple stab wounds to the head, chest, and neck. The first police officer on the scene reported that Half Zantop, who was 62 years old, was lying on his right side on the floor of his office with blood on the lower border of his blue pants, and his head was resting on the lowest shelf of his bookcase. Blood was dripping from Suzanne's head as she lay on the floor next to the office entrance. She was 55 years old. A garbage can was overturned. Papers were all over the place, along with other indications of a struggle, like a desk chair tipped over to one side. The computer screen showed a name and address search engine on the internet with all of the fields empty. 2 bloody fingerprints, prints from a bloody shoe, and 2 separate knife sheaths with black straps were also found. They were for a particular commander knife with a 7-inch blade length. Half's wallet seemed to be the only thing missing from the scene, and because nothing else was stolen, burglary was quickly ruled out as a motive. Given that this was Dartmouth College and the Zantops were the sort of individuals who appeared to have no enemies, the murders were especially frightening. They were very popular in the community and immigrated from Germany 25 years previously. Suzanne and Half had 2 successful daughters, Veronica and Mariana. They also had a large social circle and frequently hosted dinner gatherings. They were reported to be loving, friendly, and kind, always willing to provide a helping hand. They were beloved by all of their Ivy League schools' faculty members and students. Because this case was so strange, it piqued curiosity across the country, as detectives were continuing to investigate any lead that they could find. They returned to the knife sheaths that had been left at the scene. A sales record revealed that knives had been acquired in January 2000 by a pair of teens, James and Robert. Police tracked them down. James Parker and Robert Tulloch chose the Zantop's home randomly. They knew almost nothing of the couple before knocking. They went to the Zantop's residence pretending to be students conducting a study on earth science with the goal of getting access to Half's bank account. They wanted to escape to Australia and figured they'd need about $10,000 to do that. The teenagers unknowingly employed the perfect ruse when they knocked on the Xantop's door. They pretended to be students conducting an environmental survey. The Xantops had met in the mid-60s while at Stanford, and during that time, Half earned his PhD in geology, and that's exactly what he taught at Dartmouth. James and Robert had recently purchased the 2 military-style commando knives over the internet, which they had concealed in a backpack. The professor was excited to invite the 2 students in and discuss their survey. Suzanne kept busy preparing the meal for the dinner party in the kitchen. When the teens began to question Half for their fake survey, Half informed them that they appeared to be very underprepared, which infuriated Robert. He took out his knife and angrily slashed Half across the chest and face, cuts that would prove to be fatal. When Suzanne came from the kitchen to see what was going on, she was attacked as well. After killing the Xantops, James and Robert stole $340 from Half's wallet and fled, covered in blood. The 2 bodies left at the scene were not discovered until later that evening when, as I mentioned before, Roxana Verona arrived at 6:30 for the dinner. Police initially had no leads or witnesses, but found the footprints and the knife sheaths, and those sheaths were traced back to James Parker, and he told police that he had bought them with Robert to build a fort, but he later sold them. Police left and went to question Robert at his home. Obviously, they told him he was under no obligation to speak to them and had a right to an attorney. But he spoke anyway. Robert told the same story as James. He even offered up his own fingerprints and boots for matching purposes. When asked about a deep cut that he had above his right knee, he said that he hurt himself by tripping on a rock and cutting his leg on a metal water spigot. James and Robert left their houses the following morning. Their parents called the police, probably because of a note that James left saying, quote, "Don't call the cops." During that time, police had matched the boot prints found at the crime scene to the ones that Robert volunteered. The fingerprints of both teens also matched those left at the Xantops. The 2 fled to Massachusetts in Parker's automobile before abandoning it and attempting to hitchhike to California. Police issued a warrant for Tulloch's arrest while they were looking for Parker to question further. The 2 managed to reach New Jersey when a truck driver going to Indiana gave them a ride west and radioed their location to the authorities. In response, a policeman pretended to be another truck driver. He offered them a lift out of Indiana heading west, and when the pair left the truck stop, they were arrested and taken back to New Hampshire. Although James and Robert were both under 18, 16 and 17 years old, they were charged with multiple crimes, including the murder of the Xantops, and prosecuted as adults. James agreed to testify against Robert as a witness in exchange for a lesser charge. Robert made an unsuccessful attempt to claim insanity to avoid prosecution. Parker and Tulloch ultimately entered guilty pleas. Parker to first-degree murder and Tulloch to second-degree murder. James sobbed at his trial, while Robert remained emotionless and avoided looking at the Xantop's daughter, Veronica, as she read a victim impact statement in court. According to Veronica, her father's name, Half, is German for help, and his generosity and openness made the crime possible, making, quote, their deaths seem like the greatest violation. James Parker was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 16 years. Robert Tulloch was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Both of their sentences have been reevaluated. Parker requested an early release from prison in 2019. In jail, Parker earned a master's degree and was a model prisoner, according to his attorney. Professor Alexis Jeter of the English department, a close friend of the Xantops, expressed her concern about Parker's release, which caused a rift in the Dartmouth community. Jeter questioned Parker's ability to change while incarcerated and pointed out that he had access to a powerful attorney, which allowed him to win a lesser sentence at trial. On the other hand, Phil Pacoda, a close friend of the Xantops, argued that Parker's sentence should be commuted to demonstrate to the other prisoners that rehabilitation while doing time is rewarded. Parker later withdrew his appeal and will remain in prison until at least 2024. That's 10 Minute Murder for today. Brief and bingeable true crime. Thank you for listening. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, if you are not yet subscribed to 10 Minute Murder, sure, you're listening. That's a good thing. That's something I enjoy that you're doing. You're doing something that's making me happy right now. But to make me ecstatic, you'll subscribe to 10 Minute Murder. You don't have to. This isn't some kind of ultimatum I'm giving you, but I'm trying to help you find the podcast quickly and easily and always have access to the newest episodes. That's what you get when you subscribe. It costs $0 to do that. So wherever you're listening right now, hit the subscribe button. If you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, those type of things, you can go to 10minutemurder.com and find the links to where you can connect with 10 Minute Murder, or just as easily in the search bar of any of those social media places, type in 10 Minute Murder and it's going to pop right up. Thank you for listening to 10 Minute Murder. Be safe and make good choices.